Every element has a default display value that is well suited for the type of element it is, but the display property can be, and often needs to be, changed to achieve a desired layout. Check out the display.html page and the HTML code for this page. You can download this file under the video if you want to work along. There are two headings, one H1 element and one H2 element. There are two paragraphs defined by the P elements. There are two images defined by the img elements. The first image is quite small to begin with, but the second image has some inline CSS to reduce the original size to 100 pixels. Notice I am also using the logo.png image as the icon image of the page. This is why you see the image in the tab of the web browser. There are two links defined by the A elements. There are two div elements. While div elements typically contain other HTML elements, in this case the divs contain only simple text. Finally, there are two span elements which are typically used to change the formatting of a small block of text. Notice how these elements are displayed on the page. The headings and the paragraphs are stacked vertically. The spacing between these elements are determined by their default margin and padding values. The images and the links are laid out horizontally in a side-by-side manner. The div elements are stacked vertically while the span elements are displayed horizontally. These elements are closer together because they have a default margin and padding of 0. To get a better idea of how these elements are being displayed, it would be helpful if we could see the elements, not just the content inside of them. In the code, add style tags. Use the asterisk to signify all elements and set the border to 2 pixels solid red. Save and refresh. Now you see a border around each element, including the HTML and body elements that wrap around all of the other elements. Go back to the code and set the display of all elements to none. Save and refresh. The elements are no longer there. This is a common default value for many elements that you typically do not want displayed, such as the title and style elements. When setting an element's display to none, all descendants of that element also have their display turned off. So if you were to set just the body element's display to none, all other elements within the body would also not appear. Going back to the code, change the display of all elements to block. Save and refresh. Now we see all the elements we saw before, including the title and style elements. Going back to the code, let's add body in front of the asterisk so that the style is only being applied to all elements that are inside the body. Save and refresh. This is a bit easier to look at now. We have set the display of all of these elements to block. The standard block level elements, such as the div and p elements, have the default display property of block. Block level elements stretch out to the left and right as far as they can, restricted only by the width of their parent elements, and are preceded and followed by a line break. Notice the img elements are an exception as they do not stretch out as the other elements do. But the display of block in img elements still causes a new line before and after the element. Let's go back to the code and set the display of all elements inside the body to inline. Save and refresh. Here you can see that all of the elements with a display of inline do not stretch out and do not force a line break between elements. Elements only wrap to the next line when there is not enough space to be placed horizontally within the parent container. The inline value for display is the default value for standard inline elements such as the img, span, and a elements. Elements displayed inline only take up as much width as needed to display the contents of the element, and do not force new lines. Using inline is useful when you want to apply a style within a paragraph or block of text without disrupting the flow of the text. Notice that all of the elements are vertically aligned at the bottom. You can change this so the elements align to the middle or to the top as well. Let's set the vertical align property to top. Save and refresh. And now the elements are in line and aligned to the top. Notice that an inline element can wrap to be displayed partially on more than one line. Going back to the code, let's remove the vertical align property and set the display to inline block. Save and refresh. How is the inline block different than inline? One difference is that the inline block elements will not wrap. Another difference is that you cannot set the width of the elements displayed inline, but you can for elements displayed as inline block. Go back to the code. Let's set the width of all elements to 100 pixels. Save and refresh. Because the elements have an inline block display, they all have a width of 100 pixels. Change the display back to inline. Save and refresh. Notice that setting the width of inline elements has no effect now. The only exception is the IMG element. You can see that the width value is applied to the images despite them having an inline display. There are many other values for the display property that result in unique behaviors. However, inline, block, and inline block should be sufficient in achieving most website layouts. For now, my friends, that is all I have to say about the CSS display property.